BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the food programme. I'm Sheila Dillon. Today, anyone for dogfish fingers?
This is our lunch, right? This is our school lunch. We just need those homemade chips.
Or perhaps, like Year 10 students at Bristol's Cottam School, you'd prefer mussels.
It's kind of a cool process that we're doing it all by ourselves. Mussels is such a cool thing to be cooking as well. Harvey, look, they're opening. Look.
Such a cool thing to be cooking. For years now, just 5 types of seafood have ruled the fish popularity stakes here. Despite being an island nation, we export most of the fish caught in our waters, and most of the fish we eat is imported. Mad, right? It's an old and gloomy story, but as those mussels and dogfish fish fingers indicate, change is in the air. For a start, we now have fish festivals.
We went from 10,000 the first year to 14,000, 25,000 people last year. And I've actually just came from looking online at how the sales are going, and 25,000 won't be a problem this year.
And changes in school lunches.
A lot of the fishermen have got children in school, and so they can say, oh, that's my dad's fish. Yeah, how wonderful is that?
How are these things connected? What do they mean? Well, someone who knows from way back is a TV chef and campaigner who this year happens to be chairing the judging panel for the BBC Food and Farming Awards.
I'm Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall and I love fish. For more than 10 years, I've been campaigning to try and make the seafood that we eat in the UK more sustainable. I'm not sure I've got very far, to be honest. I think we've had a few wins, but the situation generally is not great. We continue to have a lot of our fisheries under pressure, and a lot of actions that could be taken to make things better still haven't happened.
What fish right now are we mostly eating, and where does it come from?
Well, for a long time now, we've been absolutely piling into 5 species more than any others in a way that, again, is statistically really kind of bonkers. So 80% of all the fish we eat in the UK comes from just 5 species. And they are cod, haddock, tuna, prawns and salmon. That's it. They're all problematic species. So cod and haddock being overfished, tuna being overfished, and prawns and salmon being farmed in ways that are quite destructive to the environment. So one of the things we really need to do is spread our consumption out over a wider range of species and start to respect the value of other species. I'm having a fish supper tonight, Sheila, from fish I caught in Lyme Bay yesterday. And your listeners probably haven't heard of either of them. One of them is pouting and one of them is scad or horse mackerel. In this country, they do not make the fishmonger's slab. They are both fairly plentiful and very delicious. Pouting is a member of the cod family. It's small fillets of very tender, light, white fish that will lend itself very well to fish fingers, fish cakes, and just being cooked in a little sauce. And scad is a member of the jack family, closely related to tuna. It's really meaty. It's a delicious fish. It stands up to spice really well. I think I'm going to bake mine in foil with ginger and garlic and soy sauce. These are not hard fish to make delicious. And yet we pile into these big 5. So yeah, there are lots of ironies and frustrations and confusions.
I mean, we need to eat more fish because without it, we're not doing mentally or physically very well.
Well, I would just pause on that. I don't think fish is an absolutely essential food for our health, but it is a brilliant food for our health. And that's quite an important distinction ultimately. I don't think we can justify getting it and putting it on the table if we are ultimately just depleting marine life in a really severe way. But then the marine environment has an extraordinary capacity to bounce back. And here's the frustration. If we did start doing things right, we'd see improvements so quickly. So there's so much potential for positive change that we as consumers would end up with better quality, even less expensive fish.
Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall. The NHS recommends that we eat at least 2 portions of fish per week. One of them an oily one, sardines, mackerel or herring, for example. But right now we eat only about half that amount. And as Hugh said, catching the limited selection of fish varieties we choose to eat helps create profound ecological problems in the seas, like tearing up the seabed by bottom trawling, dragging heavy nets on rollers. Before coming into power, some Labour Party members said they would support stopping bottom trawling. So we asked the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, if work on that had started. It told us that it will, I quote, ratify a new global oceans treaty to protect marine life and enforce bottom trawling restrictions in our marine protected areas. There are 181 such areas, which make up 40% of English waters. But while we wait, we citizens need to get smarter in the ways that we eat and buy fish, which is what this edition of the food programme is all about, talking to some people leading the Get Smarter About Fish movement. So let's begin in my kitchen.
Well, what I brought, I realise I should have taken this out of the freezer earlier. We've got pouting, dogfish, and that's whiting.
Caroline Bennett's been in the fish business since 1994, when she founded the UK's first conveyor belt sushi restaurant in London, Moshi Moshi, at a time when few people in Britain had encountered sushi. From the beginning, she made knowing the source of her fish central to the business. But this morning it's not sushi. She's here to show and tell us about fish fingers, something she's been practicing with schoolchildren in Plymouth.
So those are the very three species that the children experimented with.
Okay, pouting, whiting and rock salmon, which is called dogfish.
Yeah.
Whiting used to be a lot more common, 20, 30 years ago.
Didn't they all? Yeah.
The fish she's brought has come from the mail-order fishmongers Caroline founded as a social enterprise, Soul, that's S-O-L-E, of Discretion. It's based in Devon, and it's committed to selling fish and shellfish caught with as little damage to the marine environment as possible. And that means only from boats less than 10 metres long and that land their fish in British seaports. Soul of Discretion fish arrives at your door frozen, in packaging that lists where, when, how, and by whom it was caught.
So this one was trawled, this one was trawled, and this is line caught. And if they're direct landing, we put the name of the fisher as well as the name of the boat.
It's very interesting.
So you can always trace back. You want to know if it was caught by a beam trawler or a purse seiner or...
What's the difference between a beam trawler and a purse seiner and a...
So beam trawlers are big, heavy metal chains with runners on either end, and then they impact the bed to stir up the water for the flatfish mostly.
That's quite damaging, isn't it, to the seabed?
Very damaging. It's my hope that beam trawling will be banned. It shouldn't
So is
be
there
allowed.
another form of trawling that's not so damaging?
So these are all under 10 metre trawlers, and I'm not suggesting that any fisherman is perfect, but there's only so much damage that even the worst under 10 metre boat could do.
The Marine Stewardship Council says bottom trawl fisheries can be certified as sustainable if they meet the requirements of the MSC Fisheries Standard and pass an assessment carried out by an independent third party. If they can demonstrate they do not cause serious or irreversible damage to seabed habitats and biodiversity. The purse seiner that Caroline mentioned is a type of net that wraps around whole schools of fish, fastening them into a circular trap that closes at the top and bottom, much like an old-fashioned coin purse. But it often traps sea mammals, such as dolphins and whales. But let's get to the fish fingers. The project, which started at Plymouth University, came about after local school children and their parents learned how much of the fish caught in the seas around Devon end up being exported to be eaten in places such as France and Spain.
When people learnt that 95% of their fish were exported, there was a real sense of injustice. It's like, what? This is our fish. Where's it going? And then, of course, because they're children, it's like, how do you want to eat your fish? Fish fingers, please.
So, Soul of Discretion, you tried to make fish fingers, right? Get those into schools. It was an experiment.
It was an experiment that the children were very much involved with. They experimented with a different fish. They experimented with different coatings. So from cornflakes to polenta to wholemeal breadcrumbs to regular breadcrumbs. And then they came up with their results. And interestingly, with regard to the fish, as long as it's in this lovely crispy batter, They didn't give a damn what was in it.
I mean, were they even able to tell the difference between a cod and a whiting?
They could maybe taste a difference, but they couldn't say they liked one over another.
Could you tell the difference?
Dogfish, I think, is quite easy. It's a different texture, much denser meat. Whiting and pouting, not really.
Fish fingers have been a staple in the UK for grown-ups as well as children since they were invented in the 1950s by the American scientist and explorer Clarence Birdseye. Caroline showed me a video of how they do it. Out at sea, the cod is gutted, filleted and frozen into perfectly sized blocks. And then, in factories on land, the blocks are cut up by a bandsaw to fish finger size, breadcrumbed and fried, crucially without defrosting the insides. And this is where the production of locally caught fish fingers gets tricky.
See, that's the difficulty with working with the small-scale fishes. You can never get enough volume of one species in any one day. So what you do is fillet it down and create these blocks, and you just carry on adding to the block, and then you chain bandsaw it, which is why ultimately I would like to mechanise some of it.
Doing it differently requires investment in costly machinery. But today, she's battering, crumbing and frying the fish fingers by hand.
Should we do the dogfish first, because that will
While Caroline makes her fish fingers, I go to my laptop to talk to a woman who's making a name for herself at the seagoing end of the fish business. She's Ashley Mullenger, or the female fisherman, as she is on Instagram. She's a commercial fisherwoman working off the Norfolk coast. Her book, My Fishing Life, was published earlier this year. She fishes primarily crabs, lobsters and whelks, most of which are exported. But she also line catches some mackerel and cod and brings in some bycatch of the varieties Caroline is turning into fish fingers. Her boat is under 10 metres long. She goes out daily and lands her catch at her home port. Boats like hers have only 3% of the fishing quota. That's the amount of named species of fish that can be caught in designated areas. The other 97% belongs to the more industrial fishing fleet.
Whiting and pouting, that does come up for us, but because it's not so desirable, it's not something that we generally do anything with. Another one that we also have, I don't know if you've heard of, is wrasse. They often come up in our pots. And again, it's not something that's generally eaten in this country. I think we've become almost nannied into eating the same species of fish over and over and over again. And now we're scared to try anything new. Couple that with people being scared about sustainability issues. People are almost too scared to try anything different if they don't know its traceability.
I mean, you say in your book that a customer ought to be able to go to a fish counter anywhere and say, when was this caught, where was it caught, and who caught it? But that's almost impossible, right? I mean, at the minute.
Absolutely. Traceability within this sector isn't good enough. Yes, if you look at the labels on fish in supermarkets, you'll get a very vague, it was caught via trawl, for example, and it will give you an area of the sea, but it doesn't tell you when. You can't track that fish back to an actual human being.
Well, let's go back to your business. I mean, how much of what you catch is exported?
So of the whelks that we catch, 95% are exported to Asia. The industry as a whole in this country exports 80% of all the fish that is caught here.
I mean, that's such a phenomenal figure. I mean, is there an answer to this?
We need to start eating fish younger. I mean, you look at the relationship between fish and a lot of people in Europe. They're fighting to get good quality day boat fish, let's call it, it hasn't stayed on that boat for longer than 24 hours. And it is prized as it should be. Yet we're not doing that. And I think a lot of that falls to the supermarkets as well, to give us actual fish that's caught by actual small boats. 80% of the boats in this country are small boats, so therefore we'll be only fishing the more inshore grounds and we'll be making port every 24 hours. There's definitely more that we can be doing.
But whelks are your big catch. Are you getting anywhere with trying to persuade British people to eat them? I mean, they're seen as such a music hall pub, working class food, aren't they?
They really are, and that's a real uphill battle, the whelk. We're buying cooked prawns in supermarkets. Why can't we buy cooked, sliced whelks? I mean, if you freeze a whelk, the protein in it that can be quite rubbery in texture starts to break down. Steaming them helps no end. Slicing them, and where we would have put a prawn, put a whelk.
Do quotas affect you? I mean, what you can catch?
Quotas affect everybody in a roundabout way. So not every fish is subject to quotas. So, for example, crabs, lobsters and whelks, you can take as many of those as you like. Don't get me wrong, there are other management measures in order to keep stocks healthy. But the more commercially desirable, so things like cod, things like mackerel, they are affected by quotas.
But somebody with a boat your size, how do you get a quota?
I'm in what's known as the under 10 non-sector pool, which basically means you're given quota limits from the government every month for the fact that you're not in one of the private members clubs, I think is the easiest way to describe it. That's the landscape that we're dealing with.
Let's pretend the new government offers you the post of fishing minister. What would be the first 3 things you'd do?
I think run for the hills. What a job that would be. But I think things that would be on the top of the list would include taking back control of our waters.
What, excluding other fleets from 12 miles?
Or even, not even excluding them, but forcing them to perhaps land into this country so that we then benefit off of the infrastructure that creates. For every one person on a boat, there's 10 on the shore. I would put measures in place to protect the under 10 metre boats, better routes to market, and more support when it comes to the health and safety regulations that are being imposed upon the small scale fleet. And I think I would ask the supermarkets to up their game. They should scrap their fish counters altogether as something that they own and rent them out to small buyers, people that are scouting the markets on a daily basis. You're then getting people that actually know where that fish has come from, and they can sell it probably at a better, reasonable price that's actually fresh. I think those are the things that are important.
At this point, Caroline Bennett leaves her experimental fish fingers to keep warm and joins in the video call with Ashley.
I haven't heard all of it, Ashley, because I was trying to clear up my own mess downstairs. But absolutely, you speak to the point where we are losing so much of the coastal community economic benefit by lack of fish being landed locally. So I completely support that vision. Though until the whole infrastructure has changed, at the moment fish prices are just crazy. And fishermen just wouldn't land in Plymouth because they've got such a great access to auction. And the French and the Spanish pay so much more for their fish than the British can even afford to. And I wish you were near us, Ashley, because we'd happily take your wrasse and pouting and dogfish and all the rest of it. Yeah. I think it's because my sector just can't be bothered to process it, right?
Yeah. Who wants to deal with a wrasse? We don't have the logistics, do we? To get what we get to you. It doesn't exist. It's not there. Or if it is there, it's jolly expensive and then it becomes unviable.
Ashley Mullenger, the female fisherman. That lack of ways to get smaller catches of unusual but delicious fish to market is the great stumbling block in Britain. But one way to chip away at that stumbling block could be getting Caroline Bennett's fish fingers into a lot of schools. Time to go back to the kitchen for a taste and then to see how the homemade ones compare to the big brands.
They don't look very like fingers, do they?
This is the whiting. It's very nice. I mean, to look at it cut like this, you wouldn't know it wasn't cod or...
I don't think so. And I don't think you can discern a different taste. Most whitefish does taste like cod.
Because cod is
our benchmark, isn't it?
Is our benchmark, yeah. All right, so what are we doing next?
That's dogfish.
Dogfish or rock salmon.
So we probably need a bit of salt on all of them, but...
Okay. I think that is that's rather fishy.
Is it?
It's more meaty. It's more chewy.
Definitely.
I'm not getting much more fishiness, though.
Nor am I in the second and third.
Okay.
There was just something in that first one. And this one is pouting.
That's pouting. It really broke up. So.
But if you had the machinery...
If it was bandsawed into a shape, then when it was still frozen, it would be fine.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a really sweet fish.
I think it's very nice. Why wouldn't you eat pouting?
It deteriorates fast, so it's not like
Yeah.
a cod that will improve after 3 days or a turbot that will improve after 4 or 5. If it's not gutted and iced very soon after landing, it will deteriorate quickly. They're relatively small fish, so again, the labour involved is much higher. I'm convinced that fish prices are determined by fish processors' desirability to process them.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's extraordinary.
Which is what we move on to, because we use a commercial fish fingers you can buy anywhere. These battered ones, they're from Waitrose?
Waitrose's own brand and haddock.
Oh.
Yeah, whereas these are cod.
Those are Captain Birdseye.
Here's a Captain Birdseye.
I've never had a battered fish finger before. Very thick batter. They're quite heavy going.
The fish meat, is it tasting similar to the ones that we've made?
No, it's not as nice. It's actually pretty tasteless. I mean, I think it was no-brainer, really, what tasted best.
Well, when we do finally get to the point where we can create ours in blocks and then put them in an oven, that I'll have to come back again or send you some to do a taste test on it, because that's a fairer comparison, isn't it, really?
So what's the next step in this project?
So we have schools that are lined up to take them. The thing is to get them to them, obviously. Because we have to use frozen fish, the machinery that is currently available isn't suitable for our needs. So the next step will be to contact the German manufacturers of the bigger ones and say, can we make a much, much smaller one?
How much capital are you going to need for that?
I have no idea how much these things are going to cost, but there is so much interest from the council through to health and equity in sort of social terms, financial initiatives, that I think at some point we'll be able to get to a point where we can at least say we'll be able to supply 20 schools at this cost.
But in a way, if what you're doing works, it becomes a model for other ports.
Exactly that. I would love for us to be able to demonstrate that, okay, you might not be able to make a living as a small-scale business just on selling fin fish, but if you add on fish cakes or fish fingers or all these smoking fish, you can make a living. And I think that's the objective.
And also, you're in the business of having set up a new customer base.
Well, I'd hoped if we put them side by side as we've eaten them today, they'd actually say, no, I prefer this one. I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful? And then a lot of the fishermen have got children in school, and so they can say, oh, that's my dad's fish.
Yeah.
You know, how wonderful is that? It's such a lovely self-perpetuating story on every level.
How wonderful is that? Caroline Bennett, founder of Soul of Discretion and part of the Plymouth Fishfinger experiment. We found more experimenters and fish visionaries in this year's BBC Food and Farming Awards shortlists. One is on the Isle of Mull off the west coast of Scotland, the Peace Box in the village of Dervaig.
I've got langoustines as well, so I'm going to put the garlic butter together.
A piece, in Scotland, you might not need telling, is a sandwich, so a peace box is a lunchbox. This peace box is owned by baker Mary Arson and her husband Jamie, a creel fisher.
These are shrimp pots. So these are
They're shortlisted in the best street food takeaway and small eaters category. And the judge of that is my colleague, Layla Kazim.
So the crab sandwich is definitely our most popular. And the other thing I do is I do a potted crab with a seal seaweed butter. The lobster, we cut them in half and we take half the meat out. And we do that in a filled roll. Simple is the key here, like, you don't need a lot with it.
And what sort of prices are we talking about?
For the lobster roll, it's £12, and that gives you half a lobster in a roll or in a pitter. The crab roll is £8.50. We don't have a middleman. Like, we are literally just Jamie and he brings it here. So we save on that.
This is a creel yard. And this is where we store all our... My name is Jamie Fisher. I'm a creel fisherman here at Ulva. Mostly our catch is exported to places like Galicia, France and Spain mostly, and there isn't such a huge demand here in the UK. I think it's still thought of as being quite a high-end food for only the rich, but having the peace box, having things like a local food outlet locally here in Mull where you can get locally sourced food. It's good for tourists and locals too to try some of our really delicious seafood.
Jamie's fished pretty much all the time I've known him. You know, there was something about how we could make something that worked for the both of us. But also, the shellfish was getting shipped off to Spain. I think if you spoke to most locals, shellfish would be a regular part of their diet. A lot of the elderly folk around here, they'll just get this shellfish and they'll just eat it. And I was like, we need to keep that going. We need to incorporate shellfish in our diets because it's so good for you. And it was something about, rather than all the just being fancy restaurants selling shellfish, making it accessible to everyone and simple.
Mary Arson from the Peace Box on the Isle of Mull, a finalist for the 2024 BBC Food and Farming Awards, and the winners will be announced in early December. Another finalist is the Stranraer Oyster Festival in southwest Scotland, up for the BBC Scotland Food Hero Award. Since it began in 2017, the 3-day celebration of Loch Ryan's native oysters has been credited with breathing new life into the town after the Belfast ferry stopped using the port in 2011. Rachel Stewart from BBC Radio Scotland's Out of Doors, one of the award judges, visited Stranraer ahead of this year's festival and met one of the organisers, Romano Petrucci. He described the depression that overtook the town after the Belfast ferry abandoned the port.
The effect it had in the town was just crazy. You know, the pubs were empty, the cafes were empty. We set up a development trust to regenerate the area. And that's where it all started. I went to the local paper. They were kind enough to run a story that, you know, we were looking for regeneration ideas. And I was working away frying chips one day, and a lady gave me a really old picture of her great-grandfather fishing for the oyster beds. She said, why don't you try to do something about the oysters? I hadn't a clue what she was talking about. I didn't even know we had an oyster bed. And over the course of that afternoon, I asked people, are you aware that we've not just got an oyster bed a mile from where we're standing, but the last remaining wild and native oyster bed in all of Scotland? 49 people out of 50 didn't have a clue, and I came back to the board. By that time I'd spent maybe 3 good solid days putting together what my default would be to present an oyster festival in a working class town, and they've been incredibly supportive ever since.
And this has been about putting Stranraer on the map as a destination town. And of course that's how it was known in the past.
Yeah. Stranraer's a very unique town. You don't pass by Stranraer. In early days we referred to it as the Cornwall of Scotland. And we soon realised what we did have round about us. Now, we were really fortunate that first year the equivalent of the population of Stranraer turned up at our first Oyster Festival. We had 3 trestle tables for a bar. Now we've got a bar you can't get near for 3 days. So these things gave us the confidence to keep going. We went from 10,000 the first year to 14,000, 17,000, 21,000, 25,000 people last year. And I've actually just came from looking online at how the sales are going, and 25,000 won't be a problem this year.
What impact has it had in terms of regenerating Stranraer more widely?
Obviously, I can't stand here and say the success of the Oyster Festival is the reason for the regeneration that we really clearly see happening now. But Stranraer is regenerating. There's big multinational names arriving in the town. We've got the money and investment for the George Hotel, over 9 million. We've got money promised for this expansion of the marina behind us. Things are happening, and many of those may well have happened. But the point is, when a community creates a dream and delivers it in the manner that Stranraer has, year on year on year, and it gets bigger and it gets better, and people speak with it with such passion and pride as we do, I believe that the multinationals, I believe that the councils and the governments give serious consideration when we come looking to them saying, we believe that we need to regenerate, this is how we would like to do it, can you trust us please to do that?
It's a good story as well, isn't it? Just the history of the native oysters here, you know, so that will attract not only people who are interested in the food side of it, but the people who are interested in the conservation, the wildlife side of it as well.
Absolutely correct. And I must say, Loch Ryan Oyster Company have actually implemented those long time ago, long before us, so it's not down to us that they're going down the eco-friendly route. We are absolutely supportive of that. And there's a big part of the festival that looks and shares and educates people in that regards.
Do you like oysters?
You know something I do? You know, I need to be hungry and I probably wouldn't manage 10 or 12 or 15 at one go, but the first 3 or 4 are absolutely delicious. And I've tried others, and there's a difference, and it's quite clear the difference.
Is there a difference?
Well,
What
there's
is the difference?
no doubt about it. Just the taste, just the texture. And I think when you're standing 10 metres from the sea and 1 mile from where they've been produced, I think that makes a difference as well.
Urban regeneration based on oysters. What a story. Romano Petrucci, chair of the Stranraer Development Trust, speaking to Rachel Stewart. A story that makes real what Fishfinger experimenter Caroline Bennett and fisherwoman Ashley Mullenger were saying about bringing investment into coastal communities. Given that, according to a Marine Stewardship Council survey, 2/5 of people in the UK have only ever eaten fish in batter or breadcrumbs, it's absolutely astonishing that the promise of celebrating fish can draw thousands of people to a remote town. Bristol isn't anywhere near as remote as Stranraer, but they now have 7 days of fish celebrations, the Bristol Seafood Week, set up this summer by chef and restaurateur Josh Eggleton. It was there that food programme producer Natalie Donovan and her 8-year-old daughter Frida met Josh for a seafood platter at his restaurant, Salt and Malt.
I think the point is that we should be looking towards a more balanced diet, potentially eating a little bit less meat. That doesn't mean we replace all our meat with fish. I'm not saying that at all. We have another restaurant that I run or founded next door to us here, which is Root, and there's a subtle message with that. Let's put vegetables to the forefront, let's eat less meat, but we very much serve quite a lot of fish there as a side order. So what I'm saying is, let's get it from a positive place. Let's make sure it has the least amount of impact on the environment, and let's make sure that it contributes to a balanced diet. In our seafood guide that we created are just some links to talking about sustainable dishes that are already on people's menus. So we're just highlighting what people are doing, and then we've peppered the week with some events. So last night at the Pony we had a surf and turf night.
The Seafood Week coincided with another big Bristol event, going since the 1970s, the Bristol Harbour Festival.
It's no coincidence that we're doing this whole Harbour Fest. I just feel like creating more links to the water, which sometimes, if I'm really honest, might be a bit lacking from Harbour Fest. And I know that there's a new event company coming to help with that, and I've had several meetings with them. So, for me, if I can incite a positive food culture with anything that we do within the city, and I think that's important.
At this point, Josh brought out a huge platter of seafood for 8-year-old Frida, something she and many children her age in the UK wouldn't have seen, let alone tried.
So what we've got on this platter, we've got a Cornish crab, we've got St Austell Bay mussels, we've got some Atlantic prawns, and we've got some Porphyry oysters.
Like I said, we've got Frida here because it's the summer holidays. So Frida, which ones do you recognise and which ones look different?
I recognise the prawns, the lemon.
Yeah. Do you know what those ones at the front are?
No. They sort of look like baby frogs.
Can I tell you what they are?
Yes.
Those are oysters.
Oh.
Those are not cooked, but the other things are cooked. Okay.
Oh, why are they not cooked?
These mussels are cooked and they're nicely chilled. What you're going to do, you take the mussel off, and then there's a foot in the bottom where it's connected, and you just scoop it out like that.
Okay.
And you try. Get the whole thing in, give it a little chew. What do you think?
It's okay.
So this might help. We're just going to pop a little bit of vinegar on the mussel. Give that one a go.
The vinegar version is better.
Okay. What about a prawn?
Yes.
No, we're just going to go for the tail this time. No head eating. Just dip that in there.
That's good.
Good. Delicious?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about a little bit of bread with some of this crab.
Have you tried crab before, Frida?
No.
This is its muscle here. That's what makes a crab strong. So we're going to go with a squeeze of lemon. How was that?
It's nice, but the prawn was better.
Prawn was better.
Okay.
Good. Got a little grilled sardine here. Give that a little go. I think you like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You like that one?
It's good, yeah. Nice. Next bit straight in.
Can I have another one?
Yeah.
Very good.
Lucky Frida, appreciative Frida. If only more children could get that kind of fish coaching and tasting. Though there is a programme now in schools, English schools that is, where there are kitchens and imaginative teachers, giving secondary school children the chance of a real fish education. Since 2019, Fish in School Heroes has been working with the Food Teachers Centre to give food tech teachers the skill and the fish to enable them, in their turn, to give teenagers studying for their GCSEs the chance to handle, cook and taste many different kinds of fish. Simon Gray is one of the co-founders of Fish in School Heroes.
Food teachers find it very difficult to source produce at a cost that they can afford. The part of the programme, our aim is to get every young person to be able to prepare, cook and eat fish before they leave school. And so, by going through the teachers and training the teachers, supplying fish into school for them to work with in their lessons enables them then to concentrate on the teaching and learning element rather than ringing up suppliers and asking for produce and everything. So we're the conduit between industry and the classroom.
We joined Simon in a Year 10 class at Cottam School in Bristol.
Right, Year 10, if you could stand in your places, please, thank you. I'm going to call the register, can I have it really clear? Yes, chef.
What do you think the most eaten fish in the UK are? The top 5 fish? Cod, tuna, salmon.
Trout.
No, not trout. What do you get in a fish and chip shop normally? Cod and... Yeah, what's the other most popular fish alongside cod? Haddock, yeah, which is another one. And there's one more. We purposely steer away from those top 5 and we use things like megrim, dab, witch, pouting, pollock, hake is an up-and-coming sustainable produce, and gurnard, opening their eyes to what is available to them.
And not so expensive.
No, exactly. But then we also say to students, you don't always have to buy fresh fish. You can buy frozen and you can buy canned. You can do great things with tinned fish. How many portions of fish should we be eating a week? That sometimes comes up in the GCSE exam. So, fantastic. This guy, top of the class today, mate. Yeah, 2 portions of fish a week. That doesn't mean to say you've got to have 2. You can have more. Yeah? So a minimum of 2. And one of those has to be oily fish. Right, I want somebody to time me from the minute I start cooking to when I put this onto a plate.
I'll get my iPad.
Half an onion, clove of garlic, thumb worth of ginger, and then in with the mussels. Smells gorgeous. Any that don't open, what do we need to do? Throw them away. Brilliant, because it's not worth it. What time have we got so far? 2 minutes and 5 seconds, and they're starting to open.
All the fish used in the programme is donated by the fish industry. They can easily see the value in getting young people learning how to cook their produce.
We've had great support from industry. We've had Offshore Shellfish donate 6 tonnes of mussels that have gone into schools. We've sent out scallops, and Fastnet in Grimsby have donated hake. Our main problem in getting fish into schools is the distribution, the logistics. DFDS are on our side, so they can do the heavy haulage. It's when it gets to their distribution centres. So we're looking for a partner that can actually send from central distribution out to their hubs and then out to school. Then we could get so much fish into schools and we could reach so many more students.
I'm always quite speedy when it's released, when we can have deliveries of fish to school. So I'd always make sure that in my diary, it's a bit like getting Glastonbury tickets, all the food teachers are trying to jump on really quickly to get their fish orders into school.
Josephine Brock is the food technology teacher at Cottam School, and she's been part of the scheme since it started.
By going to the workshops and developing my own skills, I got more confidence. So if I've missed out on the online trying to get the free fish from Simon's scheme, I will tend to go up the Gloucester Road fish shop and speak to them about my needs, and they will always do me a really good cost. So I think I've now become much more established delivering those fish lessons.
Now, you're going to do this in pairs. Take your time, I don't want you cutting your fingers off. Come and try some mussels before you start.
It's very nice, Asian flavours. Oh. Eat it. It's good. It's so good. I don't know if I like that. Oh, that's weird.
What's your name?
Holly.
You're Holly. And you're
Harvey.
I think we've done pretty good so far. We're just about to add the mussels in.
Have you eaten mussels before?
No, I'm kind of scared to try it. I never really liked fish, other than like prawns and stuff. Even like fish and chips and stuff, like I just never really liked fish like that. I don't know why. I think I just grew up like not really having it in my family, so I just didn't really like it. But I'll try it when we make it.
Are you happy to be cooking it today?
Yeah, because it's kind of a cool process that like we're doing it all by ourselves. Mussels is such like a cool thing to be cooking as well. Oh my god, Harvey, look! Harvey, look! They're opening! Look!
I think it's actually really interesting because I don't think I would have got the experience to learn about fish and like cook mussels if we wouldn't have been given this experience, so it's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure that all the class seem to feel. Cooking and relishing the taste of squid, gurnard, mussels, I wouldn't have guessed. There was also a lot of pleasure for us in seeing the enthusiasm of the students at Cottam School. Well, I hope this has fired your enthusiasm, particularly for the varieties of fish that get chucked back, dead usually, into the sea or are brought ashore to go into pet food. As a new convert to pouting, whiting and gurnard, I'd say go for it. Ask about them at your supermarket fish counter, if it has one, or at your local fishmongers, if you're lucky enough to have one of those. It seems we all really need to get a lot smarter about fish.
It's amazing when they first come into a classroom, they're like, oh, fish, fish, fish. But breaking down those barriers of, oh, I can't do that, I can't do that. But once you show, then they're confident and they'll do it. They'll go home and say, I've had squid today, can we have that again? And hopefully build those habits up.
Thanks for listening. Natalie Donovan, who produced this programme, and I hope you enjoyed it.
I wanted to speak to the souls of a million strangers.
This Cultural Life from BBC Radio 4.
I actually started crying.
Leading artistic figures reveal the influences that inspired their own creativity.
Wow.
I'm John Wilson, and we've had over 100 guests on the show so far, including Nile Rodgers and Zadie Smith.
I wanted to read everything without borders.
Andrew Scott.
If you miss out the sense of the absurd, then you're missing such a major part of what makes human beings wonderful.
Judi Dench, Paul McCartney, Whoopi Goldberg, Tracy Emin, Lily Allen.
I felt like I could be seen and affect people.
Listen to This Cultural Life on BBC Sounds.
It's like the beating of your heart. That's why I love it so much.